What's the most Michael Scott-ish thing your boss ever did? I had a boss who got a promotion to senior manager. The very next day, he pulled into the parking lot with a BMW 1 Series. No one on my team even knew they made a 1 Series, cheapest possible BMW badge car. He gets out wearing a BMW Polo and a white BMW hat. He offered to take me to lunch in it. He jumps on the highway, adjusts his BMW hat, and says to me, "I don't exactly do 60 in this thing." Does a little triumphant laughter and starts going 80. There was a cop on the bridge above us. We were immediately pulled over. I will never forget the look of defeat on his face. Story 2. There was a little bar next to our old office that we would go to sometimes on Friday after work to have a few beers. There was usually 4 or 5 of us. We never asked one of my bosses because no one ever wanted to be around him during work. So why would we want him to be around when we aren't getting paid to do so and don't have to? He finds out we're going and tags along. We get a table and he starts pounding beers. We usually have 1 or 2 and then go home, and he asks if any of us are hungry. We all tell him no, that we all have food waiting for us at home or plans with our significant others to go get dinner. He proceeds to then order 6 different appetizers. The food comes and he is the only one to eat any of it, and then he gets up and tells everyone he'll see us on Monday. We were stuck paying for all the food and his beer. None of us even wanted to take any of the food home because he basically finger-effed all of it while sucking his fingers clean off. I still to this day am thinking of how to get him back for this, and it happened probably 10 years ago. Story 3. I honestly don't know if this is Michael Scott behavior, but this was absolutely bat crap insane and I don't even know how to categorize it. Context. We were having an all-hands meeting where the CEO of a small company, 50-ish employees, announced that he had just fired the CFO for embezzlement. We all knew he was full of crap and he fired the CFO because she disagreed with a decision. Anyhow, right after he announced this, he offered $100 as a morale booster to anyone who could sing the entire Tigger song from Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, so one brave girl gets up and starts singing the whole song. She gets to the last line and messes up one word. The CEO says that it doesn't count, pockets his own $100 bill, and then proceeds to sing and dance to the whole song while we stand there, watching him, mouths agape. When he finishes, striking a maniacal pose with, "And I'm the only one," we are all eerily silent. He then straightens up, unbuttons his suit jacket, and shows us the lyrics to the song have been embroidered on the inner lining. I'm 40 years old and have been working as a professional for 22 years. I've seen some crap, but I've never seen anything remotely as crazy as this, and I pray I never do again. A couple other fun stories from this guy. He'd come in while we were trying to work and challenge us to planking and squat contests. No one ever took him up on the offer, but he'd still plank and squat just the same. Hard to focus on coding when the guy who signs your paycheck is 3 feet away from you, covered in sweat, grunting and groaning like he's in labor. After firing the CFO, he took it upon himself to handle all hirings and firings. We found out that this usually meant that he would face creep the candidates and only bring in women of a certain caliber. He rarely hired men unless they were on the dev team like myself. He was very into cycling and would often wear only his cycling outfit the entire day. Coupled with his lack of understanding of personal space, this resulted in highly awkward situations. We once walked past his office when he was conducting one of his hot girl interviews, only to see him on the ground doing push-ups in front of her. He highly encouraged us to join the gym, offering to let us wear workout clothing if we exercised at lunch. But then he would give us men a hard time about it. It was clear he only had the policy to see the girls wear skimpy clothes, which they never did. He would bring in a masseuse every few weeks. It was a male masseuse, so typically only women would sign up for it. Once, a female colleague canceled and offered her spot to me instead. When I got to the conference room, that doubled as the massage parlor and changing area. I noticed that there was an active webcam hidden in a plant. Dude was a major perv. At first, he was kind of entertaining. The dude was just noticeably off his nut, but usually he'd make up for his crazy behavior by doing nice things. I only stayed for about a year, though. He fired the CFO about 6 months into my tenure, and he, as well as the company itself, started getting really unstable. I discovered that the company had a huge software licensing issue, and when I let him know, he publicly humiliated me, full-on screaming at me, talking baby talk, scolding me like a bad dog. All this right in front of all of my colleagues. I should note that I did not approach him to discuss the licensing problems in front of everyone. He asked me what I was working on as I was writing up the report. I tried to be discreet about it, but he just kept probing until I had no choice but to tell him everything I'd discovered. I started looking for a new job right away. From what I understand, things got much, much worse after I left. Wonderful thing about Tigger is Tigger, they're wonderful things. They're bouncy, troncy, founcy. Ah, man, never mind, I don't know all the words. Story 4. She told me I could take a day off when I was dealing with some severe insomnia problems, then came running into my office 5 minutes later to say too many people had the day off already. 2 people whose jobs didn't overlap with mine. Turns out it was because she wanted to take a half day off and didn't want the place to look unstaffed. Yesterday, however, she did take the day off when multiple other people were out and left us with just 2 people of 6. She also brought her soy milk maker into the office and kept talking about it. She was also using the lunchroom toaster oven to make cakes, but not for us. She also just last week started telling people all about her UTI, in particular in front of the brand new employees that was at that moment being introduced to her. She also buys food for her daughters using the company credit card when she is supposed to be out shopping for things for the company. So far, she has not been caught. Oh, and most recently, she asked a coworker to try not to schedule her mother's funeral anywhere within the 3-week span that she would be taking her vacation, because that wouldn't be convenient. She said it somewhat but not completely jokingly, but brought it up more than once. I could go on, but she's like the more malicious version of Michael Scott you see in the earliest episodes. Story 5. I knew there would finally be a perfect time and place for me to share this story. I used to work for a Broadway theater producer. We were in a meeting about the ADA, the act that requires places of business to accommodate the disabled. Like Michael Scott, our VP had come to his position through no merits of his own and had no idea what he was doing, let alone how to run a meeting. So he starts off with, "Okay, we're going to go around and I want all of us to share if we know someone who's disabled." It was just like when Ed Truck dies and he's asking people to share stories of loved ones dying. As people are awkwardly sharing, our boss is completely detached from the touchiness of the subject. Every time someone talks about their crippled granny or terminally ill cousin, he's like, "This is good, this is really good, really getting the juices flowing here." One of the senior managers said, "Well, boss, as you know, my uncle had Parkinson's." To which my boss replies, "Oh, great! Was he in a wheelchair?" Then we watch The Office Industrial the ADA puts out, specifically the scene on wheelchair-bound customers. As it finishes and we're talking, the next chapter starts up on the projector. It's midgets. Our boss stops the meeting and is like, "Ooh, midgets, we have to watch this." And then we watched midgets. It was not a productive meeting. My apologies, guys, if that's offensive. It was in the script. I wasn't sure what to do there. Story 6. This is a previous job, but some examples. One of my coworkers is black and loves chocolate. He was talking to the boss one day and mentioned something along the lines of wishing he had some chocolate right now. Boss, "Who needs that when we got some milk chocolate right here?" Referring to my coworker. Another time, it was the Friday before a long weekend and I was getting ready to head out. He comes up to me and asks me what I'm up to. I said, "Not too much, hoping for a relaxing weekend." He then makes a self-pleasuring motion with his hand and goes, "Make sure you don't do too much relaxing, huh?" One of my coworkers was having a fight with her boyfriend and was telling me about it. He walks by and listens in on the conversation and goes, "Uh-oh, I know someone who's not getting laid tonight." We went to a work event and one of the team building exercises was that you and your colleagues are stuck on a deserted island with specific items and you have to figure out how to use them to survive together. At the end of the exercise, when it came time for us to describe our strategies, he referred to one of the groups that had 1 girl and 5 guys in it, going, "And these guys have 1 woman and a bunch of dudes. I think we all know what that means." He was a character. I mean, not a bad guy by any means. He's generally fairly nice and considerate, just really tone deaf and super inappropriate sometimes. Story 7. He once said in a meeting that he started watching The Office, but it was hard to watch because he recognized himself as Michael. Spoiler, he's not as likable. He has suits that are themed to holidays. A Christmas suit, a shamrock suit, a pink Valentine's Day suit, a patriotic Independence Day suit, and my favorite is his birthday suit, which is decorated like 80s wallpaper. Think that restaurant from Saved by the Bell? Sometimes he'll wear the same suit multiple times near a holiday to get maximum exposure of the people who see him. When he's not feeling broke, his St. Patrick's Day suit has a gold pot accessory that he will fill up with gold coins and give them away to random people. Random means girls and women that are too young and or out of his league. I saw him run to intercept a woman he was obsessed with after seeing her on our group walk a few times. For a very weird period of time, he was growing his hair out. He started telling people that he would get his hair cut when he finally got some action. then kept repeatedly mentioning things like, meeting a new woman tonight, hope I get a haircut. Is this too long? I can't stop. He wears a fedora. Once asked me about it, and I told him that it was actually impolite to wear a hat indoors, according to the website. I looked it up on, and he was very sad, but then later decided he didn't care and just kept wearing it. A black and gray pinstriped fedora, often with dad jeans and a polo and short sleeve button down. He dressed up as Santa for one of our holiday parties, then photoshopped himself into a pic with Santa where he was giving himself gotcha finger guns. He gets these Shutterfly photo books made with the cringiest captions, and then puts them in the break room for all of us to see. In one picture, he captioned it as skinny dippin', and the photo had no parts but was taken at an angle down his hip and leg. He goes on vacation. He likes to announce it in our publicly broadcasted meetings, then he'll also thank his brother for house sitting. To confuse potential burglars? I have no idea. He has a personal website with an awful resume. He does Toastmasters and posts all his PowerPoints on there, including ones that reference his ex-wife and their intimate life issues. He once showed a video at an all-staff meeting where he was wearing his money suit, forgot that one from earlier, and talking about Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. This has nothing to do with our job, and the video is super Michael Scott. He gets up at the end and reveals he's only wearing the suit top and boxers. The first line of the video is, "Coming to you live from New York, I'm Johnny Cash, and I'm here to talk to you about money." Holds up a stack of bills. Awkward pause. "Sure, those are just ones, and I'm not really Johnny Cash." There's probably more. I'll come back if I think of them, but I feel I might be too late here. I hope at least one person reads this. He's really a trip to work with. Smart guy and wants to be nice and liked, but he's so effing annoying. Not that great at his job either. Story 8. I work with handicapped and elderly people. I am the face-to-face my boss is scheduling and programming. She has yelled at stroke victims because she can't understand them, hung up on the elderly who can't understand what she's saying, and refused access to people who cannot pay full price for the service because she thinks they're scamming. We are a nonprofit and receive multiple donations and bursaries to assist financial need people. She asks the casual drivers to work for free and won't fire anyone, just never calls them in. She is astonishingly inept and is the first point of contact for anyone using our service. Many people don't understand it's not me on the phone, so that's always fun when she's been a douche. She has a physical handicap herself, so her lack of compassion for the people we assist is honestly really disappointing. She hung up on a woman who doesn't speak English as her first language because she couldn't understand her first 20 minutes ago, and the woman is understandably upset. She answers to a board of senior citizens in a small town, and they are all just so impressed by her because she uses a cane that makes allowances for completely inappropriate behavior that I would be dismissed for in a heartbeat. It's time to find a new job. Story 9. Late to the game, and not me, but a coworker told me this story. She was one of 4 women working for a 10-person architecture firm that was struggling. Everyone was called in for an early meeting before work, and when they all showed up, there were a ton of cakes and coffee and donuts. Their boss instructed them not to touch any of it, and that he needed to have some brief one-on-one meetings first. He calls in one woman. 5 minutes later, she comes out with a look of disbelief, clears her desk and says she was fired, and goes home. A second woman gets called in. Same thing. Goes home. The third woman gets called in. Same thing. Goes home. Then the same thing happened to my coworker. Now, the whole firing all the women thing isn't necessarily a Michael Scott thing, but the fact that the boss of a struggling company bought a massive spread, laid it all out, and told nobody to touch anything yet, then immediately fired 4 employees, feels tone-deaf in a very Michael Scott way. Story 10. In true Michael Scott fashion, my boss, owner of a small business, did the most cringe-worthy but well-intentioned thing when interviewing a candidate for an open position. Because of the current political climate, my boss is worried about hiring a neo-Nazi or someone who hates all immigrants, etc., etc. So he decided to throw a curveball into the interviewing process to vet out any individuals who might have different political opinions than him. So he's at the tail end of interviewing this poor innocent guy, just looking for a job, when he suddenly says, "Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to speaking with you again, but I have to go because I'm late for this rally." "Oh, really? Okay. What rally are you going to?" asks the interviewee. "Oh, I'm just heading over to the White Power rally downtown. We're meeting today for the lobby to get rid of all the foreigners in our city." To which the interviewee replies, "Oh, okay. Well, it was nice meeting you." He didn't get the job. and my boss still wonders why we're having such difficulty hiring any replacement. Story 11. We started a startup a few years ago with an idea and found a few investors, one of which was the rich father of the guy I went to school with and graduated together. Obviously, he became our VP because of his dad, and also because, according to himself, he cannot work in a company unless he is in charge and he cannot take orders from a boss. At that time, I did not watch The Office, but last year when I watched it for the first time, I was surprised how Michael Scott resembles him. A few examples on top of my head. One morning, I was in his office when one of the employees, 5 total, got to the office late, maybe 9:45 or something. As she walked in, he asked her why she was late, and she replied with some excuse and walked away. He turned to me and said, "Did you see that? She thinks that she's smarter than me. Someone needs to tell her that if she was smarter than me, she would be running this company, not me." He arranged office soccer with a bunch of people from school. During the game, he was totally Michael Scott. If you recall him playing basketball, he was out of shape, could barely run, and sucked at soccer, but he would yell at employees for not running enough or not passing the ball to him. And he would get really upset if someone used good soccer skills on him. He would occasionally use the phrase, "Guys, remember, you are all very valuable to this company. In this company, I am the brain, and you're the muscles." One time we were having lunch with other coworkers, and I was having a salad. Here is the conversation. Him: "I noticed you were having a salad every day these days. What's up?" "Well, I haven't been able to go to the gym in the past few weeks, and I've been sitting at my desk all day. I gotta watch my calories, otherwise I'll gain weight." "Then you must have some genetic problem. I have never gone to any gym, and I've been sitting all day every day at my desk for the past 8 years. Look at me. I'm fine." Now, I'm not a muscular jock or anything, but I regularly exercise and I'm relatively fit. He, on the other hand, is known for being overweight to everyone who knows him. Everybody at the table was shocked at this conversation. Good times. Story 12. We all went out to eat to celebrate an employee getting a promotion on company time, and we were going to just split the bill. He gets the idea that he wants to buy like $30 worth of tater tots separately. Kept going on about how this place had the best tater tots, yada yada yada, so they barely even get touched, and he is visibly angry. Everyone got fries with their lunch. Anyway, check comes and someone starts to split it when he isn't paying attention, and we work out that everyone owes $21. When he realized, he started freaking out and yelling because he was supposed to pay an extra $30 and it was his gift to everyone and nobody but him should be responsible for the tots. All the money was already gathered though, so we just wanted to pay and leave. He makes everyone take all their money back. After all that, he realizes he doesn't have enough cash on him and the place didn't have an ATM. So he ends up paying like an extra $11. So we have to collect the now $20 back from everyone and we walk out and never speak of it again. Story 13. I submitted this one to notalwaysright.com some years ago, so stop me if you've heard it before. A coworker asked me for some help with a personal errand. It was close to our break time, so we went out and got it done on our breaks. On the way back to the office, we hit the drive-thru, and he bought me lunch. We get back to the office with our burgers. The boss looks up and goes, "Where's mine?" We apologize, say we didn't think to bring one back for her. We then sit at our desks and eat our lunch. The next day, at around the same time, the boss disappears for a bit. She comes back with a bag from the same fast food place we went to the day before, sits at her desk, and starts eating a burger. She occasionally yells out, "Boy, oh boy, this is such a delicious burger, and I only got one for me, 'cause we're all selfish like that around here, right? Aren't we?" My coworker just looks at me. Is she seriously having a revenge burger? Yes, she was. Also, we got her a card on her birthday. She tried to have us written up for not making a bigger fuss about it. Story 14. I was at a convention with my boss, and a well-dressed businesswoman came by our booth to talk about our products, to see if they would be a good fit for her store. My boss proceeded to ask her how much she was going to buy, before she even learned about the products. And when she could not give him an answer, after his consistent insistence, she walked away. As she made her way away from our booth, my boss proceeded to yell after her, in a packed convention, that she needed to go get her husband to come back and make a decision for her. Over and over he repeated that line until she disappeared in the crowd. I'm 5'10" and 300 pounds of American beef. There was nowhere for me to hide from the astonished stares, guilt, and embarrassment by the association. A year later, he died from a brain tumor, and I think that was made of racism and misogyny, but I miss The Office. Story 15. Working as a developer and performance engineer, we had to stress test our software. This involved running tests that generated result files in a not very user-friendly format. So we manually had to go through them, manually compiling the results and then publishing the results on the network. While my boss was on vacation, I took it upon myself to create a piece of software that took the raw performance files as input and generated the final report as HTML. The team seemed to really like it. When my boss got back from vacation, he asked what I had been working on, and I told him about the utility. He wasn't happy that I had wasted my time on non-performance related things. A couple of hours after our little talk, he IM'd me that the utility didn't work, it just fails. Turns out he was feeding it the output HTML files. Story 16. He wrote a screenplay. He hired us, the staff, to be in the sample tape that he'd send to Hollywood. He refused. He instead acted out scenes into his iPhone on a tripod. He and I then spent an entire 8-hour day taking headshots of him so he could include them in his package to Hollywood, because they won't even look at your stuff without a headshot, he said. He wore a black turtleneck and a man bun. He then penned a letter to big Hollywood producer in which he explained that he was an up-and-coming filmmaker who had experience producing movies, which he didn't, and that because he had said experience under his belt, he was hoping to be entered into the Producers Guild of America, because that's how you network apparently. They declined. That letter was outstanding. This guy spent 3 years building his business and brought it crashing down in spectacular fashion. I was there for it all. It was an absolute nightmare, but so worth it for the stories. I have hundreds of them. Story 17. My first job out of college was for a Michael Scott type of guy. For starters, anytime he would order lunch in for the office, it would be sandwich platters or something for everyone, and a salad for the 300-pound woman in the office. Also, when hosting any events, he would only strategically invite the attractive workers along. He also wore a huge cowboy hat when partying, despite being a city boy. The couple times I golfed with the guy, he constantly thought the cart girls were falling in love with him, saying things like, "You'd better talk to her next time she's around. Can't have my wife finding her number." He would get real urban with any black person that was hired or came through the office, both in the way he talked and asking if they liked Obama or LeBron. He would hook potential employees by saying the position was for a supervisor or team lead position, and then essentially say in the second interview that it was actually a coordinator or telemarketer role. We were on a work trip, and he talked over and over about this great local bar that he goes to every time he's in the city. It ended up being Howl at the Moon. He had friends back home that told him to go there this particular year due solely to being a hot bartender there. She did her thing and flirted with him the first night, and he went back there all 3 nights we were in town. The last night, he invited her to Vegas for his guys trip, went as far as to buy her a ticket on his phone right in front of her. He was 52, and she was probably 22. He went to the bathroom after, and she asked if he was serious or joking, and then wondered how I could possibly work for him. The list could go on and on and on. Story 18. I had a boss at a privately owned marketing firm who was obsessed with Mad Men. She wanted to be the female Don Draper. She had a business blog, would write extensively about how she was a woman on the rise in a man's world. The problem was, marketing is a fast-changing world, and she was not adapting to the game. She had terrible management skills, had no idea how to bill for work, but always maintained that she was the next big thing in the business world. We had maybe 3 clients. It was still a pretty fun gig because she encouraged us to have 2 o'clock happy hour at our desks, and it was my job to surround her blog post with images of whiskey glasses and martinis. She continually asked me to make our work go viral, and was always pleased when I said that I did. So many delusions of grandeur. It was like watching Threat Level Midnight live every day. But the business is still going strong thanks to old family money. Story 19. Not my story, but a friend's. They had a company-wide fire drill where they had all the employees vacate the building. Standard. It got strange as the normal 10-minute disruption turned into an ungodly amount of time in the summer heat. Emergency services came and went. Someone walks up with a bullhorn in front of the hundreds of employees and announces, "Layoffs will be happening today. You're probably wondering what is going to happen to me, which is a great question. You will all find out very soon. Just scan your security card to get back in the building. If your key card won't validate, then you have been let go. And on the other side of the building, a box will either be waiting for you or is en route with your belongings. The details of your individual termination will be in the box." There was no previous warning or discussion with middle managers about who should be let go. Morale and productivity dropped swiftly as they let go of high performers as well as underperformers in the same foul swoop. Story 20. I used to work in a computer store. The owner is a good guy, smart and sociable, but from time to time has a socially handicapped moment. The best one happened when I wasn't working there, though. A customer comes in to buy a computer. A little girthy, but not obese. The owner was covering the floor and started to pitch a laptop when he notices the customer's belly. "Oh, you're having a baby. When does it due? Mind if I feel?" Without waiting for permission, he puts his hands out and starts feeling the customer's belly and starts making baby noises. Customer is apparently frozen in shock as one of the salesmen comes over to whisper in my boss's ear, That's a guy." Boss turns bright red, runs out of the room and into his office. Now this became the legend of the workplace, the gold standard fumble that all fumbles would be compared against. If you effed up, it didn't matter, because it wasn't as bad as the time X thought a male customer was a pregnant lady. Even his wife would come in and get digs on him for it. Story 21. Some regulations about pricing had changed, and I went to the AR department to tell them that we needed to change X rules to make sure we were in compliance with the rules. I said, "The CEO is asking me to get this done quickly, so I need to get this done as quickly as possible so she won't yell at me." This was like a Thursday or Friday, and she was out. So Monday, I get called into the CEO's office. "Did you tell X, Y, and Z person that I would yell at you?" "Well, I was being hyperbolic, but I think it's reasonable for them to understand that you weren't going to literally yell at me." "Okay, because I don't want anyone thinking that you have a problem with me or there's an issue. So I'm calling the managers into my office. Can you please tell them that I wasn't going to yell at you?" Me silently. What the F? In 5 minutes, 10 to 15 managers show up, and I have to explain to them what the F hyperbolic is, and that indeed the CEO and the owner of this company did not literally yell at me. It was completely bizarre because I used to sit outside the door and have heard them yell at people before. So why this was a sudden concern and they had to make it clear that they were liked by me was completely weird. Story 22. I work with a guy named Pat. He was actually assigned to my engineering team until a few months ago. Pat is an absolute pain in the back. If you ask him to solve a complex problem, he'll make an exhaustively detailed plan that is tens of pages long, outlining the entire problem space, detailing possible solutions, etc., etc. Then he will execute on that plan and solve the problem. But if you ask him to do something simple that should only take a couple of hours, he'll take the exact same approach. He only knows how to make things complicated, then solve them. He's also arrogant and not shy to tell people when he thinks they're stupid. In fact, he did so on a video call with some colleagues at another site. When I immediately stopped him and told him to either talk to people like a professional or leave the room, he told me that I was full of crap and stormed out. Then Pat went back to his desk and typed out a very long letter to our boss and the VP of our company, accusing me of being a world-class idiot and a liar. Fortunately, I had witnesses on the other end of the call who supported my simple write-up, saying that Pat had lost his temper and couldn't act professionally. My boss, who is named Michael, didn't want to fire Pat, even though the VP said fire him because he didn't want to hurt Pat's feelings. What about my feelings and the feelings of everyone else who works in this office and our partner, Sites, dude? So annoying. Story 23. My old boss had so very many Michael Scott moments, so many to choose from. There's the time he grabbed my hand, saw the stamp on the back of it from the club the night before, and lectured me that I should not be going to clubs. I should be going to either the gym, the grocery store, or the laundromat, because that's where I would meet a boyfriend. I was very freshly out of a long-term relationship at the moment. There's the time he gave me crap for never wearing a dress, which made me a lot like Rosie the Riveter. Perhaps I'm a lesbian, huh? I'm an upholsterer. All of my work clothes are torn up, and every day I go home covered in dust and glue. How about the time he won $200 on a scratch-off ticket and in a fit of giddiness swept me off my feet and hugged me? I'm not racist, but I deal with a lot of Kenyans at the flea market, and they're just the worst. And this one guy was asking $50 for this painting, but I Jewed him on down to 30. I come from Jewish heritage, and he knows it too. And then there's the time his wife made him sell his camper, and he texted me about it all night because he was so sad and didn't have anyone else to talk to. This one was tough because he really did mean well and was genuinely sad, but gosh dang. Story 24. It's not so much traditional Michael Scott, but an Aussie version, I guess. I've been jotting down everything funny he says for the last year or so. Things like, John talks about bills, mangoes, trees on the golf course. Things John said. I'll do it, Jimbo. Eat half now, half at lunch. It's too good to eat all at once. Not even a minute later. F that. I'll eat it all now. Farts. That's the starting whistle. Hey, you'll probably be able to get new knees when I'm your age, John. Yeah, you're probably a new a-hole. This one's got a hole in it. Huh, doesn't really feel like 30 Celsius. And what do you reckon feels like 29 Celsius? If it would be good working for the bureau. Would never have to worry about being right. Sitting in the rain waiting for the paint to dry. It's got a 25-year guarantee, so I can guarantee I won't be painting it again. Laughed all the way back to his car. Ah, that joke is still growing cane, eh? $5 lunch? That's all right. Yeah, if you're 40 kilo, mine. You ever had a free-range animal? Yeah, I'm married to one. Sorry, guys. Not sure how good that accent was, but I tried. Story 25. Ex-boss, but one would start listing off famous black people as his inspirations when his black employees were around. Will Smith, Michael Jordan, Ben Carson. 2. Promised us all a steak dinner at the end of the month if we achieved our sales numbers. Found out he didn't have enough money and bought everyone a sandwich instead. Asked everyone to not get too expensive on the menu. 3. Gave out trophies every year. Gave out a trophy one year to the employee embezzling from the company. When he found out, he threw the trophy against the concrete sidewalk in the middle of the public. 4. Asked everyone to dance for each customer that came in. This did not work out. 5. His wife, who also worked there, and he got into heated debates about what the other posted on Facebook at times. Asked me to hack her Facebook and remove something she had posted. 6. As a result of the above, asked me if my mom ever went crazy when she stopped having her period. 7. Often stated that he was working from home and would show up to the office and show off the fish he had caught that day. Story 26. People have literally tweeted that my boss was like him when he forced us to go on a reality show. When he was talking about his life and our industry, he compared it to 9/11 and how it was a terrible tragedy. Those of us watching this on TV were slapping our foreheads as he continued about his career after this huge thing had happened. He fumbled around, trying to seem important and did a lot of fronting on the camera. But all in all, didn't do much of the work. There was a moment when he even talked about it being a late evening, talking to the camera crew and to his house at 6 p.m. to show his family having dinner, while the rest of us were at the agency until 2 a.m. Twitter was ruthless to him. It was hilarious. But they loved this older woman that he would fire her the next day after the episode aired. He would tell us it was a mutual decision, but no. We all knew he was really jealous that she took the love and the spotlight. Story 27. I'm not sure how much this is something that Michael Scott would do, but one Christmas, our whole division had been promised Christmas bonuses, $600 each. Corporation as a whole was losing money, but our section was the cash cow. After 3 years of no bonuses, money was set aside and we were finally getting one. Until 3 days before Christmas, after plenty of people had already done their shopping expecting the money, the boss came and told us the bad news. The bonus was canceled. Misery all around. To lift spirits a little, the boss went out and spent his own money and bought us each, about 30 people, a canned ham, which everyone was pretty appreciative about. 2 months later, the yearly financial report came out. I was probably the only one in the office that read it, but I couldn't help but notice that each division chief did receive their Christmas bonus. $40,000 in the case of my boss. Kind of put the whole canned ham thing in perspective for me. Story 28. Mine's not funny as the other ones here, but at an old internship, everyone called our director Michael Scott because it was so hard for everyone to get any work done. So this guy was maybe 35, but had the spirit of a 12-year-old. We could tell he was a bit lonely at home, and he did mention to us that he had maybe 10 roommates all in their 20s. Anytime any of us had work to do, he would find a way to interrupt our work just to have a chat. Like, he just always wanted to talk, and we were all maybe 18, 20 at the time. It was hard for us to find a lot in common. So one day I go up to him and ask him a question for help, because I was new to using Adobe Illustrator. Our conversation goes like this. Me. Hey, Shane. Changed name for obvious reasons. I need help with my client. What's up, Kimmy? Oh, hey, I need help with my client's image. I don't know how. Kimmy D from the V. Oh, yeah. Wait, so how do I... Kimmy D from the V is coming to me! What's up, shorty? So anyways, this went on for maybe like 3 minutes, and I still have no idea how he keeps coming up with more rhymes. I eventually just gave up asking him and went to my friend. She then proceeded to say, I like how he never answered your question. Story 29. My boss had season tickets to our city's NBA game. He was generous with sharing the tickets with employees, but if you got the ticks, you had to go. Perfect attendance got him a discount on next year's tickets. He offered me the tickets, too, one day, and I was happy to have them. Toward the end of the day, he was asking if I was going with anyone. I said either my girlfriend or a friend or my neighbor, whoever got back to me first. That's when he went full Michael Scott on me. He said, "Actually, I told Joe," a jerkhead coworker nobody liked, "that he could go with you. You guys don't seem to like each other, so this will be a good team-building event." Joe was standing right there, so there was no way I could just say, F that. To say it was an awkward and unpleasant evening would be a gross understatement. Story 30. It was day 3 or 4 of our biggest industry trade show, and everyone was ready to enjoy the company dinner, which was in a private room for 40 people in a nice restaurant. It was going to be our only opportunity to sit down and relax with each other. My team arrived early, so we sat down and immediately dug into the appetizers and the wine. Our VP then asked us to stand and mingle near the door so we could greet the rest of the guests. Lady, we all know each other. After that, right after we all sat down and started looking at the menus, the VP asked us to each stand up and give a short speech about how we felt about the trade show and the future of the company. This horse crap took so long that we had to stop and order. Then we resumed about 2/3 of the room still to go. That was also the trade show, during which I learned the VP doesn't know how to get her clothes tailored. She literally told me this. Edit. The previous Christmas, she wandered from cubicle to cubicle telling everyone about the new Fitbit she received. It replaced the one she dropped in an airplane toilet, which was information she absolutely did not hesitate to share. Story 31. I worked in a call center for a couple of months and never managed to sell a single thing. My boss had an office at the front of the room, those same blinds Michael Scott has, and he used to peek out of them, and he thought we couldn't see him. We would patch into our headsets when we weren't on calls and listen to our conversations. So, say if you said to the person next to you that you went and saw a band on the weekend, he would come around later in the day and ask about the band you went and saw. Also, one time he sat behind me and he took photos of me while I was on a call. And when I heard the phone camera noise, I turned around and he quickly pretended like he was taking pictures of the wall. He would go around to people's desks and sit there for hours showing them pictures of his cats while they were on calls. On Monday morning, he would tell horribly unfunny and mildly offensive jokes. I eventually got fired, which was fair. I'm a terrible salesperson, and was only meant to be there for the duration of my university and summer break. He cried the entire time that he was firing me. He was basically just Michael Scott all the time, except less loved, and he looked more like Colonel Sanders. Story 32. This happened years ago at an old job, but I still remember that boss. I routinely brought my boss a list of temperature readings, which he then recorded down on a paper form and figured out the average on a calculator, adding up all the temps and dividing by the number of temps. One day I bring my boss a list of temperatures that are clearly all the same. He writes down all the temps, then proceeds to add them up on the calculator. I'm dumbfounded for a bit, having just watched him write down the same exact temp over and over and over and then start adding them up. After the shock wears off, he's about halfway through punching the temps into the calculator. I sort of jokingly ask him, "Are you actually adding up all the same temperatures?" He looks up at me annoyed and says, "Yeah, so?" I just stare at him for a second, giving him the opportunity for it to sink in, but nothing. No reaction, no realization. I shrug my shoulders and respond, nothing. After he finishes punching in all of the exact same numbers and dividing the amount of temps he wrote down, he then writes down the average, the exact same number as all the others. I fake a tone of surprise and say, look at that. The average turned out to be the same as all those other numbers. That's so weird. And leave his office. I eventually moved on to a better company and a more competent boss. Story 33. I worked behind a customer service desk. My boss would often come out to his office when he was bored and break into Dance by Soul Train style, and then sort of poke our shoulders with his elbows to get us to join in. He was actually really wonderful, and so his Michael Scottisms were never annoying or cringy. But there were several instances where he had to deal with racist customers, he was black, who were mostly old and homophobic. We had access to home addresses, emails, and phone numbers through their membership of cards. When we caught on to the regular racist who gave him the most trouble, my employee and I took it upon ourselves to anonymously sign these customers up for gay black adult content. Kicker was we'd send it under their names but to their wives, so they'd have some explaining to do. We did everything very carefully outside of work, understood how many rules we were breaking and how unprofessional it was, but so was being a homophobic racist. And some people deserve their karma served fresh. Most of us have moved on from that company, but his retirement is this weekend, and we're all going. Story 34. Our local authority was having to make cutbacks, so people were being laid off, etc. One team meeting our boss opens with this big long speech about the finances of the department and how he was taking early retirement to save the department money, really laying it on thick for a good 15 minutes about the sacrifice he was making and that he was some kind of savior. Then at the end he announced, "Also, one of you will be made redundant." Item 2. First of the day, his door was shut, never left his office, then went on a week's annual leave. Nobody comes around, and it's soon apparent when his deputy comes in happy as Larry that the deputy had no idea this had all gone on because he'd missed the team meeting. So the boss basically drops this bombshell, tries to continue with the meeting agenda, hides in his room, and then buggers off for a week without keeping his deputy in the loop. Not even a note. I'm not sure how Michael Scott-esque it is, as I've never seen The American Office, but it had a very David Brent feel to it. UK Office. The guy used to alternate between being Alan Partridge and David Brent. Story 35. My former boss's name is Michael and his middle name is Scott. Michael works for the Men's Warehouse, much like Michael Scott did before he moved into the paper industry. He has argued with me about a deadline, claiming that it was a month, not 4 weeks. I let him win, even though he still does not grasp that there are generally 4 weeks in a month, not 3. The deadline was in exactly 4 weeks. He constantly asks people how old they think he looks. He looks his age, he's 61, and most people seem very uncomfortable with his assertion that he looks much younger than he is. He tells people that I'm like a sister to him. He is almost 40 years older than me. He writes his check marks backwards, mirror image, insisting that this is the only way left-handed people can write check marks. He loves to talk about how we are family, not co-workers. I'll admit he's a bit exhausting, but he is harmless. Story 36. I had an old boss describe to me this radical new plan that he was going to ease the racial tension and violence throughout the country. Tells me this is how we're driving into Atlanta. So why not just have one area of town for the white people and another part of town for, everybody else? At this point, I'm at a total loss for words, and I think he mistook that for me giving this serious thought. So he continued. He had no idea that I have 2 black stepbrothers, by the way. But if a black guy happened to run out of gas in the white part of town, he wouldn't be in danger or anything. He was so proud of himself for coming up with this idea, I just stared out the window, stunned in silence. I think I managed fair enough, or something along those lines. Not exactly like Michael Scott, but it would be if the office was set in the South. Story 37. My boss decided to have an icebreaker exercise for our department meeting, 11 women, 1 man, where we all brought 3 things that described us in a brown paper bag. Well, my boss went first, and everything was fine. Talked about herself, her faith, her family, whatever. It got emotional very quick, and a lady mentioned her grandpa passing away. Another mentioned raising foster kids. One even cried about how much she loved her husband. And it was just a room filled with crying women. My coworkers brought these crazy items, memorials, statues, huge framed photos, etc. I forgot and had to just find random stuff in my car. Did my boss just move onwards with our department meeting? No. She proceeds to super obviously make herself cry and talk about how she had someone who died once and that she too loved her husband. And it was just obvious at that point she was trying too hard to relate to these people. The man, he brought his favorite Pez dispenser, a bobblehead, and a lanyard. Needless to say, I'm quite happy to have left that department. Story 38. 1. Told people he's known me since I was freshborn. 2. Had 3 trash cans in his office. Uses 1, refuses to get rid of the others. 3. Makes his own soap at work because he doesn't like the way the others feel. 4. His wife packs him 4 to 5 containers of neatly sliced up fruit to bring to work each day, which he always shares with me. Best perk of the job, I guess. 5. Has referred to me on multiple occasions as baby, my name, to other coworkers. 6. Sulked an entire day after realizing that he left his favorite pen at home. 7. Has Kim Jong-un written in huge capital letters on his whiteboard with no apparent explanation? 8. Has a bad drawing of a paperclip on a post-it note on his desk to see if anyone will think it's real and to try and pick it up. 9. Has said to me, "That's the beauty of temps. They don't have any rights." Closely followed by, "I shouldn't have said that. Please don't tell anyone that." 10. There's a coworker whose cubicle is right outside his office. Her name is Pam. He regularly walks out and shouts, "Pamela, Pamela, Pamela!" in the same way Michael Scott does. And no, he has not seen The Office. I've even asked. 11. Has a mug that says something similar to "World's Best Boss." I can't remember quite what it says right now. 12. Background. I'm a college intern for the summer and he wants me to drop out of school and work there full time. He says it mostly as a joke. When discussing new hires in a meeting, he said, "And I recently was told in private by Griffin Fawn that they were going to be dropping out of school and working here full time." Me, laughing, "Yeah, okay, definitely." Very sarcastically. Yeah, we have a joking relationship, so it's not too inappropriate. Him leaning across his desk to whisper loudly to me, "Are you really going to make me choke you out in front of all these people?" Also said very jokingly, as previously stated, as I've known him my entire life, and this comment was meant and taken as nothing but a joke. 13. His name is Michael. Story 39. My boss's name was, quite literally, Michael Scott. The most characteristics Michael Scott thing he did involved an egregious number of helium tanks and corresponding number of balloons. To provide a little context, Michael is the CEO of a conglomerate of Christian adventure camps. At these camps, we always build our high elements internally, hiring third-party engineers to sign off on said elements' integrity once construction is complete. What were we building, you may ask? Get to the effing point, you say? A 3,000-foot zip line. That's what. At this stage, our zip line needed only one final addition, a line for zipping. So there we were, a 200-foot-ish tower at one end, telephone poles affixed at the receiving end, and a 3,000-foot spool of 3/4-inch gauge galvanized aircraft cable sidling idly by. Michael Scott was, of course, ready for this day, armed with his helium, balloons, string, and a gaggle of willing, perhaps simply curious, employees. Balloons were inflated and fastened to the cable. Eventually, the cable made it to the receiving end of the structure, utilizing mathematics, backhoes, and balloons to keep up the morale. Months later, we had our annual financial statement audit, during which we were asked why there was 5,000 to 10,000, I can't recall the exact amount, of helium and balloon purchases on Michael's company credit card a few weeks prior to his son's birthday. If you made it this far, I commend you. Your ability to cope with constant tense changes and erroneous semicolons is nothing short of astounding. Story 40. Our annual summer work outing was typically going to a baseball game. One year, it was changed to a BBQ at the boss's new big house. But it was a BYOF and BYOB event. No real big deal at first until everyone gets there, and our boss was literally taking toll of what everyone brought, and that was what you get to eat. After 2 hours, we all start texting everyone we know to please either not come or bring a lot of stuff so they can share. So there we are, all 20 of us sharing about 16 burgers and a spoon of potato salad. The boss, of course, fires up his own grill and serves his own family 2 full racks of ribs. Then we just had to stay because his kids wanted to sing and set off fireworks. The burger and potato salad ration was not accurate, but he would say, "Oh, you brought chips? So that's all you wanted to eat?" This Friday, me and those coworkers are getting together for a drink to celebrate 5 years of all leaving that job. Story 41. Every 3 or so months, we have a safety meeting at the office, as we are a subcontractor performing fire sprinkler work in place. We bring in all the office staff and field staff to mass meeting to discuss any safety violations, near misses, training, etc. Our regional manager at the time, in a slump because of the 2010 recession, decided he needed to fire everyone up and get them going for the workday. He staged a boombox in front of the conference room with a tape of Black-Eyed Peas. Let's get it started. Just before the meeting started, he comes bolting up the stairs, runs to the front of the room, pulls out the boombox out from under the table to the whole room and presses play. This was also my second day. Best day ever. Story 42. Oh man, I had a team lead that was hired, presumably as a cheap effort to replace a lead and a supervisor, back when I worked for one of the largest guitar manufacturers in the music industry. This guy literally made it painful to watch The Office because he did so many stupid backwards things in a management role that I couldn't help but see Michael Scott as the same as him. Amongst many, the ones that stand out include constantly watching YouTube videos of himself playing guitar at his desk, taking naps at his desk, very obviously. This was on the production floor of a warehouse, so his desk was very open and visible to all. Antagonizing subordinates by saying that they were holding the rest of the team back, but when called out, would backtrack, saying that it was a joke for Friday Fun Day. Telling long, convoluted stories in an attempt to make him sound smart in staff meetings. One involved how he bought a disappointed customer a bucket of fried chicken to make her feel better and to maintain the relationship. I'm sorry, what the F does that have to do with manufacturing guitars? Story 43. I recently went to a quarterly meeting for my company and they introduced the new regional manager. During this meeting, they were also introducing the new employees that had just been hired. They would bring them the new hires and ask them questions as icebreakers to help them introduce themselves. The first guy comes up and they ask him to introduce himself and ask for his favorite color, and he replies. He's asked to sit down, but before he walks off the stage, the new regional manager steps up and she says, "I want to ask something. I love doing these." So she asks him, "How many siblings do you have?" The new hire looks down and responds that his only sibling passed away 2 months ago. The whole room goes silent. The regional manager's face had that uncomfortable Michael Scott look on it. She just looks at him and says, "I'm so sorry," and she sits down. He walks off, sits back down as well, and the regional manager did not ask any more questions after that. Story 44. I had a job selling furniture. My boss was a tall, lanky character, white guy that had a head for sales, but some real disconnects when it came to other cultures. The conversation began when he walked up to a group of us and looked at the big black guy, named Rory, in the group and went, I've been taking some online college classes, and one of the electives I'm taking is Urban American Culture. By his description, it was a study of how black culture developed from slaves to a diverse group we have now. Rory rolled his eyes, but I could tell he was pretty upset. My manager had a bad habit of laying the bullcrap on extra thick. I looked at Rory and said, "Come on, man, let's go move some tables." My manager said, "What's that about Aesop's fables?" Before I could get out what I said, Rory, with a confused look on his face, went, "What the heck are those?" I quickly tried to explain that they were short stories with a moral tied into them, mainly for kids. But as I was getting this out, my manager goes on to a full lesson about what they are. Picture this, Rory. A dog is walking in the forest with a big bone in his mouth. He goes to a lake with a massive bridge across it. As he's crossing the bridge, he notices another dog below him with a bone in his mouth. He really wanted that bone too. When he stopped, the other dog stopped. He looked down over the side of the bridge, and the other dog looked back at him. At that point, he attempted to scare the other dog away to get his bone. He barked, but in the process, he lost his own bone and realized the other dog was just his reflection. That's why you must always be thankful for what you have and not be jealous of others. Rory had zoned out at this point. The poor guy was so confused on how we got from moving tables to this long, stupid story, so he just looked at my manager and went, "What?" It was at this point that my manager said something I'll never forget. "Ah, I see you don't understand, but thanks to my studies, I'll put it in a way that you can understand. Picture this. Little Ray Ray is walking down the streets of New York City with his favorite chicken wing in his hand." My eyes got huge and I clapped my hands and said, "Ho ho ho! Good story, but we have got to work. Come on, Rory." As I'm pulling Rory away from the conversation, my manager goes, "Wait, what are you doing?" To which I replied, "Saving your job. Don't go there, sir," and then continued to walk Rory to the opposite side of the store. Story 45. My boss planned a surprise 70th birthday party for himself. He invited tons of people. He's a doctor with a small private practice. He's been in the same business and seen a lot of the same patients since, the 70s. He's basically invited most of our patients, plus his family and friends, church members, etc. He also booked a couple dozen or so different acts, making it basically like a big talent show. It got bigger than he anticipated pretty quickly. He planned the venue and went to his church, and he quickly invited way more people than he could fit. So he turned it into a two-nighter. One show on Friday night, the other on a Saturday. He went all out, getting a full orchestra conductor outfit, complete the wig for one of the acts he was planning. I burned dozens of CDs for him of different songs for people to practice and background tracks to sing over. The week before the event was supposed to happen, a well-known member of his church passed away, and the chapel needed for his funeral that weekend. It didn't seem right to have this whole extravaganza in the chapel the same day as the guy's funeral, so it was postponed indefinitely. I know postponing it was not the Michael Scott thing to do in this situation, but the events leading up to it definitely were. Story 46. I worked for a Korean man who owned an ethnic hair store. It was awkward. English was barely his second language. He really wanted to be that cool, friendly local store owner who had a rapport with his customers. One day there was a woman browsing the cosmetics with a large, distinctive man standing by. My boss walked up to stand by the man as he waited for the shopping woman. My boss was smiling awkwardly, then turned to the man. "Ah, your mom?" Referring to the said lady. The very large and intimidating man didn't even blink and angrily growled out, "That's my woman." The best part, my boss couldn't even really comprehend how awkward the situation was. He just kept standing there, grinning heavily and nodding. On another occasion, a girl was browsing the tongue rings and pointed out the one that said 100% female dog. And my dude just smiled big and slyly said, "Ah, you're only 80% female dog." Needless to say, she more than lived up to expectations in her verbal response. Story 47. I work at a privately owned Hertz licensee, and branch managers get 4% of the office profits. We landed our local Ford service center as an exclusive rental provider for the massive Takata airbag recall. It was going to take about 2 to 3 months before the parts came in, but we had to get people in rentals ASAP, as the Fords with faulty airbags were non-drivable. In the first month and a half, we put a little over 50 people in rentals, and each rental costing Ford $40 a day. So 2 to 3 months of 50 cars at $40 a day brought our office $120,000 to $180,000 over a 2 to 3 month period, depending on how long each person was actually in it. It varied based on when the new airbags came in. So despite me and my coworkers doing 2/3 of the work, there's my boss, me and my coworkers at our office. The branch manager got 4% of the office profits. He told us he would hook us up at the beginning of the recall. And how did he hook us up? A pizza party that consisted of 2 pizzas and 2 liters of pop. He got roughly $5,000 over those 3 months as a bonus. That's quite the unfortunate story. I will say, I noticed he said pop there at the end, and I'm curious, what do you guys say? We say pop up here in Cleveland, but it's a dying breed. There's a lot of sodas out there. Let me know in the comments. I'm really trying to crack this code. Is pop a way of the past?